Hi, everybody. Welcome to the TDR Trade of Black podcast. Oh, man, what 24 hours this has been. I'm your host, Dales. Good to have you on. What a day in the markets, to say the least. We're going to have all kinds of information here today. Dive into what happened last night, why it happened, what could have been, I guess, done differently. I don't know. I don't think anything could have been done differently. A lot of effort was put in by Kim Rivers and her team. But we're going to have Don Murphy in just a moment to talk about some of the new appointees within the Senate. Republicans regain control, what this means under a Trump administration, and is there really a chance that safe banking could be retabled in topic of conversation during the lame duck session? So let's get to it here on a Wednesday. Welcome, Mr. Anthony Varell. How you doing? How you taking it all in?
Good. I know some people thought that I was hiding yesterday when I wasn't on the live stream. I didn't think we had a live stream, so I was drowning my sorrows in some Alien Labs flour and wanted to spare everybody coming on completely inebriated. So I figured it'd be better to save what I had to say for today's live stream.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't even know where to start, but it's been this market. What did we end up finishing on the day?
It's a wreck. Air was the biggest loser, down 57%. MSOX was down 55%. Trulieve bounced off the lows, down 38%. This is what I expected. Last night was, if we were to use game theory here, and what was the absolute worst outcome in terms of forward momentum for the cannabis industry, it was Amendment 3 failing, Donald Trump taking the White House, the Republicans in the Senate, and the Republicans in the House. And I'm not saying that because I think they're going to repeal and dismantle rescheduling. I'm not saying that because of the prohibitionist shit that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
I'm saying that simply because it's a layer of uncertainty. There's not going to be any sort of equilibrium or calming effect until we see who Donald Trump puts as head of the DEA and who Donald Trump appoints for AG. Until those two things are ironed out, there's a lot of unknowns and just a lot of uncertainty that is now going to be inherent in the sector.
Yes, agreed.
That being said, the stocks are trading like the cannabis market in Florida got killed yesterday, as if it was going to just completely cease to exist. Like to remind everybody, Florida is still a $2.2 to $2.5 billion medical market.
Yeah.
It's a massive blow that it's not going to go adult use, and you're not going to see the 9 to 10 figures on an annual basis hit some of these operators' balance sheets. There's a lot up in the air now in the state of Florida as per what the MMTC landscape is going to look like.
Yeah.
And I don't think it can be understated that Trulieve, Curaleaf, and Verano and Air, which are four out of the top 5, if I'm not mistaken, have heavily invested in expanding their grows. They're not going to be able to sit there and let that cultivation capacity be idle to cater to a medical market, and we have no wholesale. I do think that there's going to be some pricing dynamics and some interesting things that take place within the Florida market that potentially starts to put pressure on the middle of the pack operators, and you start to see price wars materialize in Florida with the big boys fighting for market share, as they do have incremental capacity that's going to need to be used.
Yeah.
That's not just going to be to sit idle in the next 4 years. Aside from that, I would also be very, very interested to see what the ramifications are for Ron DeSantis spending taxpayer dollars and spending upwards of $50 million on PSAs as it relates to combating Amendment 3. I think we grossly underestimated just the brute force and just the nature and influence that Governor DeSantis had. Miami-Dade, for God's sakes, voted no on the amendment. Miami-Dade, I would have bet you my bottom dollar would have voted yes on the amendment, just from a culture and a dynamic standpoint. The Republicans came out in full force for voting. The Democrats didn't show up to the polls, and we got our asses handed to us last night. I didn't think that poll was going to be sitting there at 55% with 75% of the vote being cast.
Yeah.
Polls are wrong. I was wrong. I want to remind everybody, I was never cocky with the numbers that I said. I maintained a 61% guess. That's all it was an educated guess as to what the amendment would come in at. When I saw the numbers rolling in, I was sitting here with my jaw on the fucking floor.
The part that blew my mind away was the counties when I started looking at Miami. When I saw Miami come in the first 12 to 14% of the votes coming in, and we were sitting at 52.8%, that got me on alert, even though we were only 12% in. And then obviously once Gainesville and Tallahassee and those votes came in, that's the University of Florida and Florida State Universities, and we were still hovering around 55. Once you get into the Panhandle, I think people already know this, Anthony, that is going to be definitely counties that are voting against Amendment 3, which clearly was the case, right?
So the Panhandle is actually a lot of veterans.
Okay.
I would have expected the Panhandle to vote yes.
Really? Okay.
As it relates to Amendment 3, with the veteran influence and the demographic that's there. That being said, I did not think that we'd be sitting there in the middle of the vote with it at 55 to 56%. DeSantis, his tactics worked. He obviously influenced a lot of people.
He did.
And something that polled 56% at the end of the day didn't pass. From my understanding, we are the second highest state in the country percentage-wise to pass a ballot initiative, being at the 60% threshold. I think it's New Hampshire or Vermont.
Yeah,
that's 65%. And the Florida legislature is already attempting to up the threshold as it relates to a ballot initiative. I saw Kim Rivers come out with a tweet last night that said, it is what it is. We're going to fight to get this done via the legislature. Judging by the gubernatorial response, as well as the response from the Republican side of the aisle within the state, I don't know how you get this done via the legislative process.
Yeah.
In the state of Florida, I think it's going to be a long time before we see adult use cannabis in the state of Florida, unfortunately. And those ramifications do reverberate around the cannabis industry, because we were counting on the state of Florida to bring that growth narrative back into the sector. That growth narrative is gone.
Yeah,
as it relates to Florida, and now we're looking towards Virginia once again. We're looking towards Pennsylvania once again, and we're looking towards Ohio scaling their sales and bringing the full adult use rules and regs to the market. It's a setback.
Well, rescheduling.
I said that it wasn't. Go ahead.
Rescheduling is center stage. That is the number one thing, I think. Yes, you can talk about these states, but we got something concrete in place. It is progressing. I think everybody's question is now what happens to rescheduling with the new Trump administration. I've spoken to a few people here today. You know, President Trump basically has come out, supported Amendment 3, and that's completely separate. But he also alluded to the support of research and rescheduling during that post on his True Social platform a couple months back. And I would find it very hard to believe that Attorney General would not be supportive of actually following through with rescheduling if the President of the United States is already backing it. And, you know, so agree or disagree with me. There's a lot of unknowns, but, you know, I think
you already have you already have precedent against what you already have precedent to the contrary of what you just said, because Jeff Sessions repealing the Cole memo was against what Donald Trump wanted. Good and point. That's actually on the record. It's basically the boogeyman here is Ken Paxton. As long as Ken Paxton doesn't become AG, we should be good.
Yeah.
If Ken Paxton becomes AG, he is totally against cannabis, both medically and recreationally. It would not be good for the industry. I don't think they would clamp down on the industry, but that's the man that'll sit and let Schedule 3 sit on a shelf unless Trump, RFK, or someone else comes and says, hey, you need to get this done. It's about time this happened. He's the only guy that really does scare the shit out of me, if I'm being completely honest. It's Ken Paxton becoming AG.
Well, we're hoping to get Don on here in just a moment. He's dealing with some technical issues on the back end. Hopefully he can come up in just a moment. But, you know, one of the things that we discussed, obviously, last night, too, with Amendment 3 not passing, we're going to see consolidation. Do you agree with that? And if so, how soon do you think that starts to take place?
Consolidation?
Yeah.
I don't think you see consolidation for a while.
Wow.
In this space. I mean, I think you're going to look at operators like Ben at GTI, who's taking a very calculated approach to the sector. I don't think Ben would start to buy anything until he saw distressed assets. And I'm talking companies going out of business and putting assets into receivership. Ben's got the airplane that's built to withstand this. Ben's got
1 second. I'm just going to bring out the phone. Don, you all right? Can you get on or no?
worked, and then all of a sudden you guys were gone and haven't been able to make this thing work. So I'm afraid we're going to have to call it. And quite honestly, this isn't fun at all.
Okay. All right. All right. Thanks. Appreciate
so
the
Josh
feedback.
DeSantis is going to get out of office himself. He's termed out. He is gone in 2026. So DeSantis is not going to be Florida's problem come 2026. We'll have a new governor within the state of Florida.
Don, can you hear us?
I hear you.
Okay. If you're froze, that's completely fine. There you are. All right, let's begin. Obviously,
but you guys are just dropping in and out. I'm only hearing every other word. You're like the E-Trade babies, right? That's what I'm hearing. I don't know what you're hearing.
Oh, he dropped out again. Yeah. Technical difficulties. But yeah, I mean, this was a big setback. I was floored by the amendment not passing, especially when you look at the strength of our medical market. But I think there was a lot of things that led into this. I mean, we didn't have the hemp people with us. We had the actual medical card companies in the state of Florida, Doc MJ, My Florida Green, Miracle Leaf. They were against the amendment. They were telling people to vote no on the amendment. I've heard from multiple people that employees at the Flowery voted against the amendment. They weren't for the amendment.
Wow.
So there was a lot of stuff.
I even saw former NFL head coach Tony Dungy that was in big support of no on Amendment 3. There's a couple tweets that he put out as well. Yeah. I don't know the story behind that, but yeah, he was against it. Gretchen, you make a very good point. Only 6 of the 67 counties voted over 60% for cannabis. It was a gross misunderstanding of the Florida electoral, but yeah, that's putting it into perspective. You think about it. We needed 60%, and you even talked about Polk County, which traditionally, like you said, is a very conservative county, and that actually voted in favor for cannabis, which surprised me. Yeah.
I stopped looking at the map.
So there were some surprises on some of the counties that I thought would, but regardless, whether you're voting for or against, the reality is that for was only 53%, and that's not the threshold that we needed. But
there's that Michael guy. I'm pretty sure he's the one that called me a clown last night. I wasn't hiding from anything, you keyboard warrior. I was not on the live stream. Pretty sure that's the comments that Arns sent me. So I'm not going to shy away from talking shit to people that are going to sit here and just put backhanded comments in the
I was going to address him last night. I've never actually heard of him before on any of these podcasts, but obviously here for one and one reason only.
But this is a big step. This is a big step back. Like I'd said, I don't know where it goes from here. This could have a waterfall effect. We got to see the redemptions that are potentially going to happen at MSOS, because the problem right now with cannabis stocks is Dan's going to have to unload some of that inventory, and who's actually going to sit there to buy it.
Yeah.
So we could see a cascading effect. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen necessarily to some existential degree, but I mean, I'm a big proponent of any whole number you could cut in half. So we don't really know where the floor is on a lot of this stuff. There's going to be price discovery. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on these stocks, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I think that people should definitely take a cautious approach to evaluating companies right now, not necessarily think that things are on sale. Can't stress enough that we are dealing with dislocated capital markets. There could potentially be some end of year tax loss harvesting, and it's really not, no one knows where the bottom is on these things. I'm obviously going to watch them pretty closely. I'm not sure if there were redemptions today, JJ. We're going to see here, I think, within the next hour from Dan. But I mean, MSOX being down 55% at 93 cents a share, it's not good. The good part is we didn't see like power hour selling. The selling was kind of early in the day and tapered off, I think, around 1 or 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then just stayed constant. MSOS finished off the low of the day. I think the low of the day was 984, and it finished the day up. It finished the day at, not up, 497.
Yeah. Josh Harris, just go easy, man. The industry is not, well, when you say effed now, I think that's an extreme term. Yes, of course, this is a, tough day to say the least to swallow regarding Amendment 3, but the industry does grow from a fundamental level. But, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that right now, but I think the most important thing that we need to understand too is what's moving forward. We're actually going to bring in lobbyist Gretchen Gailey, who actually works with Dawn as well in Washington. I want to bring her in and actually discuss some things. But Gretchen, thanks for coming in here at the last second. But look, the Republicans have regained control of the Senate. And yes, Donald Trump has won. So what I'm trying to get out of this here today is just to get people kind of a roadmap as to what's next. Maybe if you could just center your camera a bit. You're just off a bit.
I'm working on it, Chief. You're killing me.
Sorry, apologies.
I just got here.
No worries. But what are some of the notable changes that you saw in the Senate? Obviously, the Republicans regaining control. But if you could provide some sort of feedback based on what you've learned, your experience in Washington, and what you make of what happened last night that has an impact on the cannabis space, what stands out to you most?
I love how everyone thinks that this is the end of the world. I see this as probably maybe one of the best things that could happen to the space. Because finally, we're going to have one party in charge of all three chambers that we need. So maybe something can actually get done for once. It may not be exactly what people want or how it's going to happen, but there will be zero excuses for cannabis legislation not to move now.
Yeah. So this speculation that people are worried about a new Trump administration, as Anthony pointed, who's going to be appointed the new attorney general. And yes, giving an example like Jeff Sessions and what he did regarding like repealing the Cole memo back for, I don't know, 8 years ago now. I forget how much time it's been, but how should people view this based on like, could we see the same thing? Or is there any kind of insight or examples that makes you feel optimistic based on this new administration being in place?
I am
just running into technical issues
on the side of cannabis. Granted, he does have his abilities to flip-flop. So you can only take him for what he's worth, but he does have friends that have been cannabis fans for a while. So I do think that there's a good possibility that he is not going to shut us down. Anthony makes a great point about the AG and who's going to be the head of the DEA. I have less optimism about rescheduling. I do think someone from the DEA is going to screw that up, but that's just me, and I'm a glass half empty.
So then what are you optimistic? What are you optimistic for getting done? Something like SAFE, and let's say someone like Thomas Massey getting into ag and fixing the farm bill and maybe bringing cannabis with it.
I am optimistic for SAFE. I guarantee you there will be zero social equity. None of that is going to happen. Republicans are going to make it how they want to see it. Perhaps with the help of, our good pal, what's his, the weirdo from with the cars, Tesla.
Who? Oh, Musk.
Yes. Perhaps with his help, we can help to get uplisting and things done. And make them understand the more business side of cannabis space. From my interaction with the Trump administration from years ago, they weren't that opposed to cannabis. They just knew nothing about it. And so I truly hope that getting people in the door will help to get that done.
Yeah. That's
so if they knew nothing about it, but Schedule 3 will increase medical research, which Trump has been a proponent of medical cannabis, doesn't that give you hope that he could, with the right influence, mandate getting Schedule 3 done to understand the plant to a better degree than what we understand it now?
It does, but I would rather see Republicans take a different tack than rescheduling. I don't know why this industry has refused to move forward with a national medical bill. That is something that Republicans can get on board with. That is something that Trump said he would support. I don't understand why we don't. Every other state has done it this way, where they see medical use, they understand the sky is not falling. I don't understand why we want to go to federal legalization and think that it's all going to get through. These old white guys are all of a sudden going to have an epiphany. Yay, let's all smoke. That's not how it works. They need to understand the medicine side. We need to push forward national and then allow Trump and his boys to go ahead with states' rights and letting states decide how they want to proceed when it comes to adult use.
Okay. So next steps, we look at some of the new appointees. For example, Senator John Tester out of Montana. He was not reelected. I'm trying to remember. Is it Tim Sheehy?
Tim Sheehy took a seat.
Who won a decent margin, 53 to 45%. So do you know any background on him and what you can share with us?
I don't know a ton about Sheehy. I know he's young. I know he's a veteran. I think that plays into our hand a good deal for cannabis. Tester, he was on board, but truly he was on board with safe banking. He was not an all-in cannabis guy to begin with. So I don't think that we're going to do much worse with Sheehy. I think we will absolutely be able to make the veterans argument and the need for medical cannabis to him.
Yeah.
The one flip that we did have was Sherrod Brown to Bernie Moreno, which Bernie Moreno's, from what I've seen, is a straight up prohibitionist.
Okay.
He doesn't think it should be legal. He hates the smell. He thinks it's just he's got DeSantis's talking points.
Okay.
As it relates to the plant.
Don't care. It doesn't bother me. Why? Because Sherrod Brown, while he was a fan and chairman of the committee, he didn't help to get shit done either. And he's a Democrat. The hell with him. I'm ready to move on to someone else. I don't think that is a big. We got plenty of Democrats out there. So what if Sherrod Brown is gone? I don't need him as a supporter. I'm happy to see Casey gone. He was not a supporter of cannabis. He was a guy who I met with who wouldn't even get on board with safe banking because Joe Biden hadn't told him that it was okay yet. I am ready for people who have brains in their heads and are willing to take a stance. I think you're going to get more out of McCormick as a businessman than you ever got out of Casey. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for some of these Republicans who are coming into the Senate. It's not going to be the picture that we've looked at before, but I think there's a lot more chance than we've seen.
A lot of changes that we saw in the Senate, like McCormick. How old is he? Do you know? Like roughly? Is he
50s-ish?
Sorry, what'd you say?
I'd say 50s.
Oh, he is in his 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
He's not young. He's not old.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, next steps. We've talked about it with Dawn a few times, and we talked about, am I surprised? No, but I'm almost, I don't want to say disbelief, but look, we're here. The Republicans, it looks like it's going to be a clean sweep. They've regained control of the Senate. Donald Trump's the president. From what I'm seeing right now, this current voting score is 207 to 188. With regards to the House, you need 218 to win. So if we do get a clean sweep, there has been talks about Chuck, like it's now or never, safe banking, lame duck session. How realistic is that? Do you know? Have you had any examples or feedback on whether or not that could start to garner some interest and some momentum?
I know that leading up to the election, the week before, we were supposed to have some talks with Chuck that did not materialize. And I found it surprising that they were willing to talk to us, a few days before the election anyway. So I do believe it's on his radar. Now, does he still care? Who knows? The man never cared about cannabis till about a year or two ago. For the other 30 years, he was in the Senate. So is he going to make a push now to try and take a win away from Trump? I think it's gonna be a toss-up between whether or not he wants to listen to the social advocates, because that's the only way that you're going to get some type of social advocacy coming out of the Senate. So if you can get those folks on board to push for Chuck to make this happen, but it'll probably get attached to some appropriations bill and then thrown out. And
with the branches of government, let's say streamlining themselves from a party perspective. So the executive, legislative, because we get a red wave. How important does lobbying now become even more important? Because technically we have bodies of government that will actually get shit done versus just argue. So is this probably the time where the industry needs to actually get its shit together in Washington if we are going to see congruency between all of the things that matter with Republicans in office?
Well, and 100%. And the industry needs to learn how to speak Republican. They need to stop showing up in their weed suits. They need to stop bringing the 50-foot joints out at their protests. They need to stop having smoke outs and all pass out after a half hour and not get anything done. Yes, they need to know who their audience is. This industry is terrible at knowing their audience. They need to know what issues matter to Republicans. I was listening to David Culver a little while ago. He was doing a webinar for MJ Biz around 1:00. And In a polite way, I think he is 100% wrong on everything he says. He was talking about how wonderful the messaging was for Florida because Republicans understand safety, and that's the message that we should bring to Congress. That message failed. It failed glaringly. Didn't get done. So I don't understand. I understand where he's coming from, the safety, but he said we're just going to repurpose this shit. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It drives me up a wall.
So how should we be talking to Republicans? I'm assuming the freedom aspect.
Taxes, jobs,
taxes,
numbers, the economy. You need to make them understand. When it comes to actual, if you're going for the medical side, you need people who are showing up, having a seizure on the floor of people's offices and say, this is what happens if I don't get cannabis. We've got to get drastic. And I don't understand why this industry is so good with just pussyfooting around for 10 years. It's ridiculous. You need to have a presence in Washington, and you need to make them remember you. You can't just be half-baked stoners on the side of the lawn hoping someone will notice you're protesting your weird hats. It's bullshit. Get it together and get your asses into people's offices.
Can you be more honest?
I'm sorry. I'm fired up. I'm pissed off from last night. And I'm a Republican, and I'm not thrilled with how things went down. But
well, I think to get some dialogue and some direction here, because a lot of people, I think, are worried, as far as next steps. They think this industry is like, as you said, it's very emotional stage reach now. It's been less than 24 hours based on the news, but I wanted to get you on here to basically give examples and conversations that you're having that could provide at least some insight and direction on what next steps to take. So, a lot of that stuff that you said, and from my understanding here, you still think that lame duck for SAFE banking is probably a long shot, correct?
I think it's a long shot, but I do think it's a possibility. If the right pressure can be applied to Chuck Schumer to sit down and do his job, I don't know what he's been waiting for. Even Cory Booker has been out there saying, hey, I wish we would get this done. Are you kidding me? Just then get it done. Bring it for a vote. There's no reason you can't bring it for a vote. Let the Republicans try and kill it in the House, and then you can blame it on them for that bullshit if you want. But the ridiculousness that they won't even bring it for a vote, it's their fault. And I don't want to hear one person bring up Mitch McConnell, because it's not the case. Chuck brings it up for a vote. It's on him. So that's what I would love to see happen.
Re-educate our audience.
That's in the past during the lame duck. So I do think there's hope.
Re-educate our audience as to why this is not a Mitch McConnell responsibility. He's not even allowed, just walk us through how it works on the back end as to why you're saying and viewing that this is a responsibility and a duty really that Chuck Schumer needs to do and get this a floor vote, and how in this case, Mitch McConnell being the minority Senate leader is not capable of actually giving this a floor vote. Walk us through that.
Chuck's the majority leader. It's up to him what comes to the floor for votes. That's how it works. Mitch can bitch and moan all he wants. He's old. He's doddering. He's retiring. He's not going to be in leadership next time around. I'm done with Mitch McConnell. It's not a part of the conversation. We need to be looking at who's going to be next in leadership. You need to be looking at who's going to be the next chairman of banking. You need to be looking at who is going to be in charge. And a lot of those things we aren't going to know for a little bit while longer. Do not assume because Tim Scott is ranking member now that he's just going to move up to chairman of banking. He may want to go somewhere else. There's all sorts of things, and what kind of promises are going to be made by Donald Trump to other people. So I would not bank on anything that is currently happening, but we need to be positioning ourselves for when it does. And so that means getting into Washington. You need to still care in December, even though December 2nd might just be some type of logistics type hearing, and they're really kind of just setting up the rules of what might happen in a few months. We still need a presence there. I forget who I was listening to who said, don't bother showing up. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not saying we need to have a throwdown type protest, but we need to be out there. We need to be in the press. We need to be putting pressure on our lawmakers, and we're not doing that.
Well said, Gretchen. Who do you think will be the next majority Senate leader?
Well, I was slightly disheartened when I saw Dane say that he wanted to back out of that. However, my hope is Trump's going to come along and say, you're my guy. And it's like, how do you not then do what the incoming president wants?
Yep.
I think that is,
For Danes?
Yeah, Danes.
Okay. Danes would be good.
I would
Danes
love
would be a
Danes.
home run.
Now, Danes has said that he will throw his support behind Thune. I've met with Thune and talked to him about cannabis before. He is not the biggest fan. He is a practical man, though. So this is what I would see happening, is if Dane says to Thune, I will throw my support behind you to be leader, then you're going to get this done for me, and you're going to get safe banking up there. There's lots of horse trading that can be done. So I think that is a definite possibility as well. Do I think Thune is going to advance a ton of other type of cannabis legislation? No. Frankly, Danes was never, rah, I'm going to do adult use. But he understood incremental reform. He understood trying to get the banking side done. We need to get things done. And getting one piece of legislation passed, just one real piece of legislation, not some bullshit research bill, not telling the FDA to, take a look at CBD. I'm saying something that will actually be meaningful is what is going to get some wind into our sails and actually going to energize the states, help people see that this is not the end of the world. This is somebody that we need to take seriously.
Okay.
Yeah. If we get safe in Schedule 3, that's a win. That's a win for the industry.
Yes,
for the next couple of years. It's not what we want, but it'll get the job done for the next couple of years for the industry to take that next leap.
Yes, but I also would like to caveat people who think that Schedule 3 is happening immediately. It's going to take some time, as you're noticing.
Oh, no.
And I'm not saying that you're saying that, but I'm saying, dude, say it gets pushed to February or March. Then they're going to talk for a few weeks, and they're going to do this, and that's going to come up. I mean, shit, it might be 2026.
I don't think Schedule 3
until the end of the administration. If they don't want to deal with it, they could do that.
Yeah, I don't think Schedule 3 is materialized. I don't think Schedule 3 is even a possibility until like August, September of next year. And that's just being an optimist.
That's being a healthy optimist. That is being you're high as a kite on somebody's product. No effing way August happens. Okay. I'm concerned by who goes into the DEA, whose our drugs are. They may kick this and just sit on it until 4 years down the road.
That would not be good.
Mark my words.
For all that would not be good for all parties involved.
Well, and they have the complete ability to do that. Because even when the judge makes his ruling, people got to remember, it's still not up to the judge. The judge takes a look at everything and says, yeah, I think we should do this. It's still up to you, DEA. The DEA makes a decision.
But that's the reason that stocks today are down 50, 60, 40%. Yeah. It's not because of Florida. It's because obviously the general public and the investor base are guessing that the Trump administration will sit on Schedule 3 and it won't happen for the next 4 years. That's what the price action is telling you today.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the past actions of the Trump administration, and they did not destroy this industry. But again, they were like Obama. They didn't advance it either. Neither did Joe Biden. So we have to put the pressure to make them understand why this industry is important, why it is something that should be talked about around the kitchen table, how this drug, this plant is essential for so many people's lives and for the small business and for Main Street. Republicans love the term Main Street. People need to start throwing that around a little bit more in their messaging. That might help get some shit done, especially in small town America.
But what you just said is not really inherent to the cannabis industry because small business is not preferential within this industry.
There's a lot of small businesses in this industry.
There's a lot of small businesses in this industry, but it's dominated by corporations and limited licensed states that don't have
how
the
much
best
love
optics.
did those MSOs get yesterday in Florida?
I mean, they got shit on in Florida because DeSantis took the monopoly narrative against TrueLeaf. But what I'm saying is from going to the lawmakers and saying that small business, I guess, is viable in this industry, they're going to do their homework, and you're not really going to find out that the small business or even the social equity aspect of this industry, it's not thriving. It's flailing in the wind.
You say it's flailing in the wind, but I look at a dispensary that employs 30, 40 people. You look at that across somebody's district, there's a lot of people that are employed. Yes, small businesses might not be bringing home the millions and billions of dollars that MSOs are seeing, but they put Americans to work. They are giving Americans their medicine.
I'm not disputing that.
I'm saying that's what rings true to lawmakers. When you can say, I've got 1,200 people in your district that are employed by Cannabis. That goes a lot further than an MSO writing a check.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, we're going to get into some stock stuff. Gretchen, I appreciate you coming in here at the last second and providing some insight. But yeah, I do like the idea of the messaging aspect, because it's like we have got to like shake things up and be front and center. But, you know, hopefully some of these bigger companies actually get front and center with this administration. I realize the DEA makes the final decision, even if the judge rules in favor of rescheduling. But hopefully there's some education amongst the administration and really some hands-on approach as to, like you said, numbers, tax revenues, job creations, that sort of approach and language. And like you said, you've got one party that controls everything. So if you're going to get something done, now you understand, I guess, an idea as to what kind of messaging needs to be done. Now we got to get to work, right?
Yeah, we've been needing to get to work for years. I don't know what we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
I got you. Gretchen, let's keep in touch, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I realized people, I could see your all frustration. We're like, Gretchen, thank you for coming in the last second there. We're really hoping to have Dawn on as well to give you a little bit more direction. But again, challenges obviously on the back end, and wouldn't have something more concrete. And yes, I get the idea. It's just like speculation and guessing, but we're doing the best we can here in the last second as we're pivoting right now with the show. But Anthony, like, where do we want to go from here? Today's show. I'm trying to think of some words that we can.
You just said you were taking it to the stocks. I was waiting to see what you were going to say.
Yeah, it's just, there's a lot of questions that are going right now. A lot of people concerned, and we don't want to give any kind of investment advice because it's just not who we are. We just try to provide as much information from the guests that we have on, but it's hard not to ignore what happened today with, like you said, Air Wellness, you said was down. How much?
Did I not say this was going to happen last week?
Yeah.
I said this was going to happen. If 3 didn't pass and we got a Trump presidency, there was going to be a massive sell-off in stocks.
Yeah.
I said that last 2 weeks.
So it's happened.
I bet on that. I bet on that today happening.
It's happened now. And now we advance moving forward. I saw a tweet from Doug Cass, hedge fund manager, last night that came out and said these stocks are uninvestable for 6 months. Do you believe with that? You agree with that?
Doug said they're uninvestable for 3 to 6 months. And my take on that is Doug is speaking to the fact that we're not going to have visibility into the DEA head and or the AG for 3 months. And 6 months is probably the
aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's Doug. Doug's. I like Doug. I take what Doug says at face value. He's had some opinions that have been right. He's had some opinions that have been wrong. Doug's gonna Doug. So I take what he's saying with a grain of salt. He's definitely not a fraud. I mean, the man manages a decent amount of money. He's acclaimed and people listen to what he says. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know if you would say uninvestable. I mean, if you want to look at the tier ones and go on a thesis that this industry is going to consolidate, you're going to see carnage within the mids and the little guys, and it's going to consolidate into 5 big corporations. Those 5 big corporations are on sale today. Not saying they can't go down, but if you want to just go on a multiple basis in line with the revenue that they're producing right now, not factoring in growth, not factoring in 280E, some of these companies are fair valued right now, if not arguably at a discount. I'm not going to say which names. You can go do your own homework and figure it out on your own. But there's some names that are getting beat today that have no leverage to Florida and really shouldn't be down 30% on the tape.
Yeah.
And yes, Anna, I did make a significant amount of money on that bet that I made. So it paid off.
All right. We almost forgot that it's earnings season. What do we got?
TerraSend actually just reported 74.2 million top line, gross profit margin of 48.8%.
Truly started the MSO.
We're actually going to have Ziad and Jason on tomorrow.
We are
at 4:00, followed by Boris at 4:30. Curly, from my understanding, reports tomorrow before the market opens.
Yeah, we gotta be interesting to see their take. So we've got, as you said, Ziad and Jason from TerraSend Boris on, and then come Friday we got Charlie Backdill from Cresco on. So so the who's who. We had Kim obviously on a Monday to talk about the amendment, but some great guests this week. So feel free to ask any questions even outside of earnings if you guys want to log on tomorrow.
Curaleaf reported today.
Yeah, they're
reported. Well, let's see what they did.
Yeah,
I had them on my calendar. For tomorrow.
So some of the highlights, and I look at TrueLeaf, year-over-year revenue grew up with just 3%, but margins climbed up 52% to an industry-leading 61%.
Curaleaf's margins are industry-leading, but I think they were 3%.
No, I'm talking about TrueLeaf.
TrueLeaf. They were up 3% year-over-year. They were down 6%, I think, quarter-over-quarter. They opened up 15 stores and had Ohio come online within that quarter. Margin improvement was great, but the same store sales as well as growth wasn't really there.
FCF dipped to $7 million loss, impacted by the $48 million in A3 support.
They spent an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah. 151 Florida stores. That represents 70% of the retail footprint. Big risk, big reward. And man, Gretchen had some good comments on messaging, but we've often thought, and even a few people have said this, that once the Republican Party comes in, they really back off as far as the banks. And there's a lot more trust that's involved pertaining to that. And I'm curious to see with this new administration in place, man, oh man, hopefully we get some sort of
Curaleaf reported at 408. Curaleaf top line $331 million, decrease in 1% year over year, and adjusted gross margin of 49%. So Boris has improved the margin, I'm pretty sure, quarter over quarter. Third quarter international revenue increased 82%. We'll have a lot to talk about with Boris tomorrow at 4:30.
Yes,
this looks like a decent print, just judging on the top line, and it's going to be that. I think it's going to be imperative to talk to him about the rate of growth and what the upside looks like on a go-forward basis with the international business.
Well, one thing that Don actually mentioned to me on the phone was the fact of, yes, Wolf, I forgot that was you who said that about the banks, the Republican Party. Very much appreciate that feedback. But one of the things I think Don wanted to talk about is he would really like to have seen, obviously, Amendment 3 pass, because this would have been a very proper, structured blueprint for a lot more red states to actually look at how things were deemed properly done, and just seeing how that develops in the growth industry as far as cannabis legislation in other red states, which, you look at Florida, but then you also look at the growth of other new markets that could have went online in the coming years. But what that does ultimately with with Amendment 3 passing, that's obviously it's tough, when you look at some of these red states. But there's still
the international growth strategy from Curaleaf could pay dividends going into the future for the next couple of quarters, because, like I'd said, we needed growth to come back into the narrative. Florida was looking to drive a lot of that growth in the majors, and that growth is now not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's the biggest detractor from 3 not passing, is the top lines would have gotten significantly larger with the 5 tier 1 MSOs via A3 passing in Florida.
Anthony, do you think more executives from this industry will be in the ear of Donald Trump and his administration, knowing that, look, Kim spoke to the administration and he basically endorsed Amendment 3. So now that the next catalyst in this industry is all about rescheduling, do you think you'll see a lot of executives in this space get in front of these people with the Trump administration and talk more about this? Yes, this is an agency, objective to obviously pass rescheduling. It has nothing to do with politicians, but at the end of the day, you appoint somebody who's the DEA and the AG, and really at the end of the day, they're making the final decision through it all. But we need to get the messaging out in Washington more and more. Do you think you'll see more of that going into 2025?
I mean,
I know you're going to say your hope.
Kim Rivers sat down with Donald Trump to get him to endorse Amendment 3. I would be willing to bet that Kim Rivers still has a line to the Trump administration, and will be talking with them as it relates to cannabis policy. Ben Kovler, I bet you is going to be in Washington. Charlie Backdill, I bet you is going to be in Washington. Boris Jordan is probably doing the same. The CEOs, I would have to bet, are going to get very involved, and I'm just saying this anecdotally, but I think they're going to get very involved with the administration on what they should be doing as far as cannabis policy goes, especially as it relates to the streamlining of the House, Senate, and the presidency all being potentially red. They have the power now to get things done from a legislative perspective.
Let everybody know, too, that we reached out to the office of Congressman Dave Joyce. Hopefully they will get back to us relatively soon to have him on. We interviewed him back in April, but it'll be great to have Congressman Joyce on to talk about just SAFE as a whole. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, from my understanding, we cannot vote on another ballot initiative until the next general election, which would be 2028 in Florida. It can get done legislatively, though. Within the Florida state legislature, but that obviously is going to have to pass DeSantis's desk, and DeSantis will be sitting in that chair until 2026.
Yeah, just got feedback from Nancy Mace's office too, their comms director, and sounds like we're going to be approved to get her back on. So we'll keep people posted when Congresswoman Nancy Mace will be back on. Senator Joe Gruters, good point there, Dr. Barry Gordon. Senator Joe Gruters is very close to President Trump, as was a strong A3 supporter. All right, my friend. Tried to stretch this out as much as possible here today and do what we could. I know a lot of people are frustrated, but listen, as always, appreciate you guys logging in. We're going to be working on a few things. As much as we want to talk about stocks and stuff like that, we will continue to talk about that. But let's face it, the market.
And no, Michael, I agree with you. I'm just stating the facts that it can happen legislatively. I give it a snowball's chance in hell of happening legislatively in the state of Florida. I'm not even going to start to talk about that. It can happen. I do not think it will happen. Absolutely not.
So here's something that we're actually going to be proposing and actually presenting with some agencies out of Washington. But I think that, the next steps for us as a content platform is to continue to have these live streams to talk about the business with the guests. But I think equally, if not even more important, is more of a presence of us in Washington. And maybe this is some of the key messaging, as Gretchen mentioned, that needs to be done. So I'd love to get your feedback. Leave some comments below and let us know what you think. If we need to be in Washington more, and if you would find even more value by us meeting with tons of networks in Washington to push the narrative forward and to get the right messaging out and really to shed some proper light and education to the decision makers in the nation's capital pertaining to this space to ultimately, just provide more education awareness, because we all know from some of the feedback with JD Vance, Donald Trump, and among others, they're just uninformed as to what this industry is all about. And a lot of people misinformed in Florida after what just happened based on, oh man.
It'll be interesting to see if JD Vance hosts Fat Joe at the White House.
Yeah. And I appreciate it. This is a great channel, Talk Stocks. Let's all make money. I hear you. All right, my friend. I know you had some great stuff actually this morning pertaining to Amendment 3. Got a lot more stuff coming up as far as a wrap-up of earnings reports. We're also, like I said, Charlie Backtill, Friday, 11 a.m. is going to be on a special Trade to Black edition tomorrow afternoon after market. We'll kick things off. The executive team from Terracin, followed by Boris Jordan from Curaleaf. So action-packed, the who's who of the cannabis space, all on our podcast here today. And then Michael DiGiulio from Village Farms will be hopping on Monday to talk about Village Farms' latest numbers, and we'll probably have a few more. Shad, Germany fast-tracking Pillar 2 will not happen. There are going to be new elections, Humorman writes. Interesting.
I've heard that there's delays in Pillar 2.
Gotcha.
Well. We can talk about that with Boris tomorrow.
Older gent, we actually reached out to Emma Andrews from XLeaf earlier today, so we should hopefully have her on the next couple of weeks. A lot of sentiment growing as much as interest with the Canadian LPs after what happened yesterday. So, yeah. All right. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Okay.
See you about it tomorrow.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for watching. Where does time go? We're already at Q4 2024 as we get ready for a big federal election here in the U.S. What's going to happen? Who's going to win? And what kind of impact will it have on the cannabis industry? We'd love to get your feedback. If there's any guests that we've missed, leave some comments below. As usual, make sure to smash that like button and click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information that we share here on the TDR Trade to Black podcast. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.